Hi, welcome back to class. Today we are talking about naturalistic observation, and this is one of the research methods that I said I was going to talk about. Okay, so before we enter into this class or before we go further into it, I would like to ask a question. What would happen if people knew they were being watched? Now, this is what would happen. They would definitely behave differently. They will behave more politely, more carefully, perhaps, okay? And they would also perform a version of themselves rather than simply be themselves, okay? So that is exactly the problem naturalistic observation solves. It is the art and the science of watching people in their real environment without disturbing what you're trying to understand or what you're trying to measure. Okay, so hi, I'm Viola. Welcome to class and welcome to my channel if you're new here. Nice to meet you. Well, let's go into this class. So, what is naturalistic observation? In naturalistic observation, participants are observed in their natural environment with little or no intervention by the researcher. And the process of this observation has four steps. Now, the phenomenon, which is the interest of study or the participant or whatever it is that is being studied, which is known as a phenomenon. The phenomenon of interest is observed and studied. Okay, that's one step. Number two, observations are carefully recorded through notes, audio, or video. Number three, recorded observations are analyzed. And I talked about this step, data analysis, I talked about it in the 6 steps, in the 6 defined step process of research. If you know what that step is, please put it in the comment section. What step is that? What step do we analyze data in the 6 defined steps process? All right, and number 4 is that conclusions are drawn from this analysis. Okay, so recording methods may vary. Okay, researchers may use field notes, narrative field notes. Okay, they could also use structured checklists. They could use video equipment or audio equipment, and they can actually combine all of these strategies together. All right, but the rule is constant: do not interfere with natural setting. The moment a researcher or the researcher intervenes, the observation is no longer naturalistic. So you may be thinking, how do they intervene? You show actions or something happens and people notice that they are being watched or stuffs. You see, that's a kind of interference, okay? Or the researcher does something that gives it away, all that. So who uses this particular type of observation? Well, this method is widely used not just by psychologists but by anthropologists, sociologists, and even ethnologists. So whenever the goal is to understand behavior as it actually occurs in its authentic form, right, in its natural state, naturalistic observation is the tool to use. Okay, so there are 2 types of observation, which is naturalistic and controlled observation. And understanding the difference between these two is very critical. Now, on the left side is the naturalistic observation. Now, this happens in real environment. There is no manipulation, there is no control, there is high ecological validity. All right, and there's also this high ecological validity means that what you see, right, is exactly, or it reflects how these people actually live. And remember, I told you validity is measuring what is a study or test measuring what it says to measure. Okay, so it's the validity in naturalistic observation is very high, because what you see is exactly what you want or what you are measuring. Okay, so I hope you get that. All right, now the trade-off in this is that the less control there is less control over what variables are present. Okay, so yes, there's ecological validity, the environmental, or what should I say, the environmental setting is giving you exactly what you want to measure, but you have less control over what you are actually measuring. All right, there can be different variables that can come in, and you might not really have the control over them for you to really measure what you want to. Okay, but here in the right column we have the controlled observation. So this happens in a structured lab environment. All right, and we can reference this to Thorndike and Skinner's famous conditioning experiment. These are examples. Of course, you know about Thorndike's Skinner's what do you call it, experiment, right? Behavioral psychology. Well, if you don't know, we're going to learn about it after all, right? So this particular observation, the researcher controls what the subject encounters. They are the ones that set the variables and test it on the subject. Okay, so this gives precision, right? But it reduces ecological validity. Now, what does this mean? It doesn't measure what it really measures in the environmental setting, because now people may perform or may not act the way they are supposed to act for you to be able to measure this, whatever it is you're trying to measure, in its natural state, in the most highest way, even though it's more precise and much more directed and you have more control. This is just the downside of it. Okay, so neither of them is better, right? Neither of them is better, and they serve different research goals. So it depends on what your goal is for you to be able to know which of these you want to use as a research method. Okay, so let's apply this to a real life example. So meet Kwame. Okay, Kwame is a father who noticed something about his 4-year-old son, who is Kojo. So Kojo is a completely different child depending on whether he is alone or with other children. When he is alone, he's talkative, he's imaginative, he's calm. But when he is in groups, he's quiet, he's watchful, and rarely initiates anything. So this is the observation that Kwame has observed, and this is a naturalistic observation. All right, because he is not interfering, he just stays there and watches his son as a father. Okay, so Kwame does not confront Kojo. Okay, he does not ask him about it. He does not tell him, oh, this is what I've seen, because that's a kind of interference in naturalistic observation. Because now you're going to say that, and next time maybe Kojo, which is his 4-year-old son, will try to change behavior whenever he's in groups and try to change behavior when he's alone, which has affected what he was supposed to study and test and measure. Okay, so he does not confront him. He rather sits quietly in the corner of a playroom, over for 2 weeks and watches without interference. That's naturalistic observation at play. And then he takes structured notes on Kojo's behavior across both contexts. That's when he's alone and when he's in group. And this is naturalistic observation done properly. I just want you to understand by applying this to real life situation. All right. Now, his records reveal a clear, consistent pattern, and the difference is real and repeatable. Okay, so he has observed this and he sees that this is a repeated action. Okay, there are no changes. So, Kwame has now described a phenomenon, which is his son. His son is his study of interest. He has described this phenomenon accurately. There is validity because now he has measured what he wanted to measure, which is his son's behavior in two different contexts. And the ecological, the ecological context that is present there is very valid because now he sees that there are no changes, there's not been any interference from him, and the behavior is repeatable and everything. So description is accurate. Okay, it's very accurate. So now this raises a research question worth investigating. So Kojo has seen this and he, out of observation, out of personal curiosity, a research question has been raised and now is being investigated. So is Kojo's, and this is the research question, is Kojo's behavior linked to introversion, social anxiety, or social learning pattern? Okay, that's the question that is there. You can see variables that are being there. You can see a connection also over there. And then his observation, he connects it to Bandura's 1977 social social learning theory, which shows that children learn behavior by observing others, not by being taught directly. So you see, I told you in the research, the 6 psychological research steps, that when you identify a research problem, okay, you make sure that you review related literature. So you review existing knowledge on this your research question to make sure that you are not running exactly the same research this thing as another person, if that's not your goal. Okay, and you also can use that related literature to spot gaps. Okay, so but Kojo now has gotten his research problem, and now he has decided that okay, he's going to use Bandura's social learning theory. Bandura claims, okay, and it's empirical. That's his study. His study says that his theory, I mean to say, says that children learn behavior by observing others, not just by being taught. Okay, so now he is going to definitely follow the 6 psychological steps. All right, of course, using his son as a phenomenon to get to a conclusion. Okay, so Kwame, which is the father, cannot answer the why yet. He cannot answer why his son's behavior, when it's in 2 different contexts, are different. Okay, but he has described the what, which is the first step of a research. All right, a first step of identifying the research problem. Okay, so that is where every good research begins. Okay, so now we have gotten that into our head. So what is our key takeaway. Number one, naturalistic observation means watching behavior in real environment without interfering. Number two, its strength is ecological validity, which is what you observe reflects how people actually behave in the real world. Not how they perform in controlled setting. So measurement is mostly accurate um, in naturalistic observation, okay, when it comes to ecology. All right. Number three is its limit is that it describes behavior, but it doesn't explain behavior, okay. So you see what is happening and you do not yet know why. So that's up to you to use what you've learned to know why. Okay, so this is the end of this class, and in our next class we're going to move to our second descriptive method, which is case study. All right, naturalistic observation is our first descriptive method, which is under descriptive research as one kind of research, okay. So case study is where one person is studied in extraordinary depth, and we're going to learn why it matters and why you cannot generalize from them. I'll see you in the next class. Bye.